Go! We are
Doesn't
live.
get any worse.
What was
And
that
that's
sound?
it. And that's
That's-
it for the season.
That's a wrap.
Just
What
how
is
we drew it up.
Did you just
Yep.
deflate something? Is that the? Is that
Yeah.
the note?
That's his
I did.
entry every night.
Okay.
That was the deflating of the season that you heard.
The Boston Celtics are playing for bigger things, and those bigger things begin on Tuesday. We know this now, right?
Yes.
We know this. The Celtics will play the Wizards in the play-in game that was established today. Celtics played, I guess, people wearing Celtics
Basketball.
uniforms played a basketball game today. It really wasn't representative of what you're going to see going forward. No Tatum, no Fournier, no Smart, no Kemba, no Tristan. Obviously, no Jalen, but that's not going to happen. No Rob. So that's where we are, and that's where we shall remain. We'll get some takeaways from the game. Jimmy, why don't you lead us through?
Yeah, this was one of those games where you just knew that they were going to come up short in the end, as they have for most. No, I'm just kidding, guys. I'm not going to lie to you. I missed this entire game, so
Nobody really watched this
game.
game.
No help on the breakdown of this game.
I
Bobby
kept a close eye on it, but I was watching the Hornets. I was in a different place too for most of this game.
Okay, if there's one thing we learned today, if you played a lot of minutes today, that doesn't bode well for what you're going to be doing in the playoffs. Okay?
This is like preseason game 4 of the NFL season, right?
If you played a lot today, that means you're not going to play a lot going forward.
Yeah.
And they were led in minutes by Romeo Langford. So it is what it is. I actually was, the fact that Nesmith played not few, but relatively few minutes. You couldn't play 0 because they didn't have enough bodies.
Mm-hmm.
But seeing Nesmith and Pritchard kind of on the lower end of the scale definitely tells you they're in the circle of trust and will be playing some playoff minutes.
They're gonna practice tomorrow too, which I'm glad to see.
Yeah. So
they need it. That's for sure.
Coffee.
Definitely need that.
And that's where we're at, guys. We got the Wizards. We can talk about this game, spirited, whatever. Good job for the kids. Kudos. If some stuff comes up, we'll always circle back. But the big story, of course, is this: Wizards rally, beat the Hornets, and that's who the Celtics play. They push their way into the 8th seed. Charlotte bumps all the way down to the 10, right? And they're playing at Indiana for the 9 seed. Is that right?
Wow. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So Charlotte could have had a friggin' easy pass where just you beat this dead ass Celtics team and then you're in the playoffs as a 7 seed. Now they got to win on the road twice. So they missed an opportunity. Wizards come in here little banged up. We've got some Bradley Beal situations to monitor here as well, as he kind of came back from injury, but apparently the Twitter sphere said he didn't look good. But guys, opening thoughts here on the Wizards matchup. Was this, I guess, of all the possible draws, is this the one you wanted, or is this the one you feared?
This is the worst one. This is the worst that could have happened. When it rains, it pours. Like we were saying this week after week with the Celtics team, and what a way to end the season, of course. I'm not talking about the loss. I'm talking about this matchup overall. This doesn't, for Bradley Beal, for superstars going at it, we're going to get one heck of a game. Don't get me wrong. I don't think this is a matchup where the Celtics are completely overmatched to the fact that they're down by 20 with 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. The Celtics going to fight. I think they have that much in them. Jayson Tatum has shown that much. And, of course, this is the big stage. This is the time when he's supposed to perform at a high level. But, between him and Kemba, I'm expecting a humongous game from both of those guys. And I'm almost going to go out on a limb and say if that doesn't happen, this team doesn't win. There's no way this team knocks off Russell Westbrook, the way he's been playing lately, Bradley Beal, banged up or not, these guys are inspired, and especially Russell Westbrook. This is sort of his time where he likes to prove everybody wrong who's had a false narrative about him, throughout the course of the regular season. So yeah, the Celtics are in trouble. This is not good. This is the worst.
They're not in trouble. They're not in trouble at all. And if you guys were here, and I read it yesterday, Vegas considers them to miss the playoffs plus 400. They think it's a long shot that this team loses.
First of all, that's not that long considering they have to lose twice. And second, it's not a bad bet.
It's a great bet. I think I said
I
that.
want to hear. I still want to hear from you guys. I've been asking you, is anybody here going to say it? Is any of you here going to pick them to lose?
Well, it's not picking them to lose, but
I just think that's an interesting
Jimmy, you go. I've had my say. Go ahead, Jimmy.
I think that's an interesting way to start your take, but go ahead, Jimmy.
Yeah, right. So
talking about Vegas.
I think right. I think the Wizards is the problem with the Wizards is they can outscore you. So if the Celtics want to get into a scoring battle with them, I think they will lose that. If they don't play defense and show up and make it difficult for the two-headed beast there, Beal and Westbrook, I do think the Celtics losing this game. I mean, we've seen them lose to this team before, so they certainly know how to. And this was before the Wizards even got hot and went on that stretch. Now, they're not as hot as they were when they were ripping off wins back in April. They're not at that level of hotness. But I always get worried when the playoffs start. If you're not trending in the right direction, typically you're not long for the playoffs. And that's in any sport. The hot teams go further. We saw it last year with Miami. We've seen it in the past with, I mean, you can even go look at football and like the Patriots, run into a hot Giants team when they lose twice. It doesn't mean the Giants were better than the Patriots, but they were playing better at the time. And that's what it comes down to in the playoffs. The team that's clicking on all cylinders, that's playing team basketball, that's, doing what it takes to win. And that's what these Wizards are doing. The Wizards and the Celtics are they might be one seed away from each other, but they're completely different ends of the spectrum in terms of what their mindset is going into this game. The Wizards are ecstatic to be there. They're riding momentum. They're riding all the positive vibes, and the Celtics are limping in. Guys are hurt. They've missed expectations, and they're almost lucky to be where they are. All things considered. So when Bobby tells me, "Oh, Vegas is this, Vegas is that," plus 400. I mean, honestly, I think that's a good bet because if you're Wizards versus
good
Celtics,
odds, but it's not going to happen.
If you're Wizards versus Celtics, that's closer to a toss-up than I think people think it's going to be. I think it's going to be Celtics are going to be favored in that game, but I don't know what the line is. But if I had to guess, 4.5, something like that, not a big spread. And then all of a sudden you bet.
I'm going to call this one 2.5. I am curious what it is, but I mean, it's just based on how the two teams are playing. Wizards are 15-5 over their last 20. Celtics are 10-10. It's one team has basically been playing 500 ball for literally 60 games. And the other team absolutely shot out of a cannon after they were left for dead and playing much, much better basketball.
Yeah, but John, this kind of matchup, though, it's of course, to a certain extent, especially in this situation, it has to do with the momentum for the team. But we're talking about individuals, though. This isn't a series, right? They just have to win one. So I mean, the Celtics, they're not doomed, but
No. But there's two problems. They
have to win one, but is that a good thing? I'd like them better in a series. I think
I would too. That's the thing. The puncher's chances.
They have to win one. They have to win 1 out of 2, and they're almost better off.
Any team can win one game.
Yeah. There's multiple issues. First of all, one, you wonder whether you've got like a team that doesn't give a crap whether they win or don't win because they recognize they're not getting much further than that. When the expectations are high and you're like, oh God, I got to win this play-in game just to get wiped out by friggin' Philly or Brooklyn or whatever. That's a kind of that works against the Celtics, where Washington would be like, look what we did. Bigger deal for those teams. Bigger deal for definitely them, definitely Charlotte, who were like, nobody thought we were making the playoffs and we're in the tournament. So those teams have a lot to play in, and that's who they're going to be facing 1-2. Number 2, yes, the Celtics rested players. We have no idea if Robert Williams plays, what Marcus Smart looks like, assuming he does play, coming back. So there's a couple of wild cards there as well. In addition to being out Jalen, you don't know how healthy Marcus is. You don't know if Rob's playing at all. If you enter this game with a hobbled Marcus and no Rob, are you telling me the Celtics are the team you would pick? I would absolutely not. I mean, that's
Beal's hurt too.
I understand. Way more important. The Beal thing could be a factor, and we'll see what he is. But at the end of the day, people are tweeting about him not playing great or not looking great. He still played 35 minutes today. So
he had a strong closing stretch. The first half, he was a disaster. He finished 8 of 27, made it through 35 minutes, like you said. So he's healthy enough to be out there, but he didn't move well, and he had a hard time getting a shot under him for large stretches of this game. And for a team as thin as they are when it comes to like real deal scorers, Ish Smith went off. That was really what drove them over the finish line. That's a guy who has killed the Celtics in the past too. So I get what Josue is saying. Like, this is a scary team that's really challenged the Celtics at times this year, destroyed them in DC, gave them that good run in that Beal-Tatum duel. That was one of my favorite games this year. And they're going to be incredibly challenging to defend. They're one of the best offenses in basketball. And Westbrook, just the intensity he plays in that kind of environment. I get why people are worried about this game in particular. But even if you lose, you still get that second shot against Indiana, Charlotte, and then you're on the Philly, which is actually probably what you would prefer out of the two opponents that you could possibly see here between Brooklyn and Philly.
You think so?
Like, it's tough. I said yesterday, like, playing Philly would be like drowning and playing Brooklyn would be like falling out of a building. Like, you're kind of splitting hairs there, but you have a chance to steal some games against Philly and their drop defense and, just the kind of stuff that they do. I feel like Brooklyn would just light them up for 4 straight games and it'd be over real quick. So it's
I think everyone would rather play. Anyone would rather play Philly. I mean, you want to have puncher's chance. You say you take your chances with Philly. There is that mental aspect of it. For some reason, the Celtics, have had Philly's number.
Yeah.
They don't have Brown now, so it's almost like who cares at this point? But if they had Brown and a fully healthy,
you get a lot of open jump shots against Philly, and that's something that can work for Boston.
I can't watch Embiid. First of all, it's gonna suck watching them lose, but I can't watch Embiid shoot 20 free throws a night.
That's why it's like drowning. You're gonna be
rather watch
slowly
Harden?
choked out.
Watch Harden shoot 20.
You know why? I'd rather watch Kyrie's art. I'd rather watch them do cool, pretty things and hit awesome shots than watch Embiid fucking shoot 25 free throws a game. On half of them being ticky-tack fouls, the other half being because we have total incompetence at the center position. Both of those things will absolutely rob me of my soul. I can't do it. I'd rather watch Brooklyn because I actually like watching Brooklyn. I like watching Kyrie play. Like they are. It's pretty. It's pretty basketball. Yeah, they're good. Plus, also, you always have who knows if 2 of those guys are going to come up with hamstring injuries in the middle of it. I feel like
here's my thing about
the mid-series injury factor is higher with that team.
Here's my thing about that. Even if Harden and Durant went down in the series somehow, I feel like the Celtics would still get swept. They couldn't even touch this team this year. They played them with Kyrie struggling,
missing Jalen, but yes, they played with just Kyrie.
Yeah. For some reason, the Celtics haven't even been able to compete with that team this year. So I want nothing to do with them in terms of maybe getting lucky round 1. But either way,
it's a really
as you said, pick how you die. I'd rather lose to the Nets because the Philly's gonna kill me. Plus, you don't want to give Philly. Who do you least want to give that sense of satisfaction to? Kyrie for stomping all over
Feels
you.
like a lose-lose, right?
Or Philly, who you've owned all this time, and Celtics fans have been taking victory laps around them for years about the process being tough. The process being dead, and Philly's just going to stick it right in their face.
You lose to the Nets, you don't really have to worry about their fans because who even is their fans anymore?
Friggin' faux hipster Brooklyn.
Sixer fans are tough. They don't let you forget anything. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Brooklyn would not be a tough environment to play in. Philly has been dominant at home this year. I think they're 28-7 at home. There is still an outside chance. Milwaukee's playing Chicago tonight, and Brooklyn's playing Cleveland. If Milwaukee wins and Brooklyn loses, Bucks move up to 2. So that's still a possibility, but it's a very slim one.
At some point, we probably have to acknowledge that the Bucks are good.
I think the Celtics, if you add all of them, you probably pick the Bucks, right? Out of the 3.
Yeah. The Celtics have played the Bucks well this year.
They've played them well, but I think also Milwaukee's been playing better in the second half of the season. They've beaten Brooklyn a couple times, albeit with a diminished lineup. I'm kind of curious on that, if that's really what you're wishing for. I think so.
Hey,
I think it might be.
Hey, we're talking about Philly, Brooklyn, and Milwaukee. That's probably the best out of those 3.
Yeah. I wouldn't be stunned if the Bucks make them, but the Bucks want to get out of that. Bucks want to get to that 2 seed just to avoid Miami.
Yeah, but how bad Celtics need
that 3-6 draw is terrible.
But how bad?
And I would love to watch Miami friggin' steal it from Brook. That would be a terrific.
That's a good first round matchup. Yeah.
Reversal of fortune.
We're in for some. We're in for some really fun first round matchups.
Just none of them will involve the Celtics.
One of these players that we saw tonight, or today, I should say, is going to be. I don't want to say important, but they're gonna need something from one of these guys, right?
So there's one guy, and it's Luke Cornett.
Look at that smile.
Here we go. Everybody drink.
And unfortunately,
how many minutes in?
The Luke pause, that little subtle. Yeah, I mean.
Unfortunately, he didn't.
Though, Bobby, that first quarter. Dare I say, a young rim protector in the making, almost a couple blocks. I mean,
I see it. Again, I want him back next year badly.
This has to be in short stints to really to get the most out of it, but it's promising. I give you that.
He has
on that end of the floor.
He has 14 blocks in his last 7 appearances, and we know he's only playing 10.
I love Bobby's small sample sizes. The guy is 4. The guy's 4 out of 6.
That's actually.
That's actually his last 5 from 3-point range. He's an 80% 3-point shooter.
No, that's not the same.
This guy.
That's the same. That's the exact opposite of that. This is him playing small sample size and getting a ton of blocks, which is actually impressive. More impressive than if he shot 4 threes and made 3. So again, like Joe Sway said, he can protect the rim. He can move his feet. He can rotate on defense. The problem is that he's wide open from 3 every single time, and he can't hit it, which is actually the opposite of what people were expecting from him.
See, that was my problem for Grant in the first half, but then he hit a couple in the second. So I'm like, all right. But either way, when he does the fake, which he gets a lot of people with, sometimes it's like you have to hit that step-in shot, you know? Like, it's tough because if not, defensively, like, you're lost out there.
No, but if you play Embiid round 1, you're going to need Cornet to play a little bit. Maybe it's Taco. Sure.
Absolutely.
Again, I don't know, but you'll need
everyone's playing all those things.
You're not going to be playing Grant against Embiid. Now, meanwhile, if it's Brooklyn, you're not going to play any center, probably. You're going to want to go small and match the small lineups with them. So at that point, it's like, what wing can you pick out here? Could it be Nesmith? Could it be Ojale? Could it be 3 guards with Pritchard? I don't know. But at that point, if Rob's hobbled, you don't want any center on the court against Brooklyn. So those are the kind of guys you're looking at today. Unfortunately, John, Romeo had a good game, but just fouling. Few key miscues, few misses inside. He just had
You're not counting on anything from Romeo, but I texted you those couple of times, and again, I'm not deluded here. Romeo's not making an impact if they get into the playoffs and play an actual series. He might play a couple of bench minutes if you need some defense on the wing with Jalen out. Sure, fine. Just those moments where he is aggressive, he takes it to the hole. He had that couple really nice finishes. I just don't know why that couldn't be a thing. You know, his jumper is not right, and it might never be, or it's, you know, in development still. But I don't know, you know, bad shape, his head's not there, lack of focus, playing with people who don't like trust him. You know, I have no idea what it is, but just two seasons down the tubes. We're kicking it to next year with Romeo and a full off season, hopefully healthy, and say, all right, dude, do something, you know? And if he doesn't, he's toast. This is, you know, otherwise there's no reason to talk about him. There's no reason to talk about him.
We knew for the most part that was going to happen, John.
But we thought it was an audition.
File this off to the list of shit that you hated about this season. Like,
well, the good news is he should be healthy. He should be healthy going into next season because he's probably not going to sniff a minute going forward here. So unless he, you know, falls off a cliff.
Just like your mic's a little in and out, but can you check the connection on your mic? I'm getting a couple. It sounds like you're hitting and missing a little.
You know who else would be interesting for Brooklyn? Jabari Parker. Parker's another guy I'm thinking about when it comes to that Brooklyn series. Again, I know we look at the whole roster that played today and say, hopefully none of these guys are doing much in the playoffs. But if Brown's down, that means one person has to step up off the bottom of the roster. I think we hope it's Nesmith. I don't think he's particularly locked himself into that position yet, especially with his inexperience. So if you put a guy like Parker at the center spot and spread things around there.
Nesmith in the playoffs. Yeah, 9 o'clock. Nesmith in the playoffs really freaks me out because of the fouling. The last thing you can do is get into the bonus friggin' 4 minutes into a quarter because Nesmith, you know, just is being aggressive. Like, that stuff's cute in the regular season and it earns you minutes because everyone's like, oh, look, he's trying. But in the playoffs, you can't just friggin' run into people, you know, like you 5 fouls every 19 minutes he plays is way too friggin' much. So like,
if that's your worry, we're going with Semi.
Well, that's what stinks is if you're trying to minimize damage versus hit home runs, then I honestly believe if they entered the playoffs and Jalen was healthy, they should have, and they had no Rob, they should have cut the cord and gone small and just did their best. You can't do that against an Embiid team, but you could have done it against Brooklyn, and I would have said go for it. I don't know what you do here. You're right. You're trying to like minimize damage, stay in the game, give yourself a puncher's chance. If some shots fall, keep it close enough. And so you need to like not give the other team a ton of free throws, a ton of open looks. You need people who aren't going to.
Well, you wish you had
aren't going to F up.
Well, you wish you had more answers right now. I know most of us agreed that if they went into the playoffs, you don't want to see the experimentation continue. You want to just kind of stick with something and hope to build on it through some ups and downs. When you think about how all the young guys and the lower roster players ended the regular season, you almost got no answers. Like Nesmith had that little stretch and then he kind of tailed off in terms of production. And then everybody was just playing equal amounts once Brown went down in terms of opportunity late. So I don't think Brad learned anything in terms of stuff he can trust here. It might just go back to Ojale because he's been here the longest.
I'm afraid of it, and I've been afraid of it, the whole time. So I don't really know.
If they're going against Brooklyn, You might end up seeing.
I'm afraid of I'm afraid of a lot of Grant, a lot of Semi, and a little bit of Neesmith, which with a really short leash, really short. You know,
the best way the Celtics really stop the bleeding most of the time, though, right? I mean, that's the problem, especially against a team like the Brooklyn Nets. That's sort of been Brad's binky in a way, but like the other side of that, especially offensively, I think that's what worries everyone, and then obviously the consistency. I mean, Shemi, sometimes you're getting nothing.
It's too bad, yeah.
Starts like we talked about it before. Like, okay, the start where Shemi comes in and he plays like 7 minutes because Brad's like, I don't need him. He's not giving me anything tonight.
What is this? His fourth season?
You can't afford that in the playoffs. Like
who's fourth season?
Ojale?
I think honestly, I think he's been here like 15 years.
It's his fourth.
Yeah, he's 42. Actually,
now that we're getting the playoff time, and you got to find some guys you can trust, you would have thought he would be that guy. And if he's just right there with everybody else, even though he's been here 4 years at this point, which is so tough. So you're right, John. You can't look at him as that reliable, stable piece because he's just like everybody else. He'll go 2 for 7 from the field and he won't foul. But what's that balance at that point?
I don't know. I don't envy Brad. I don't envy Brad.
This is why the fire Brad thing's tough. Like, who is going to manage this well?
Again, it's not a matter of
Parker, because you need something to counter that. Like, you need some sort of offensive, something off your bench, because when the offense goes stale, like, forget it. They're gonna get run out the gym because the defense is not there. You know?
Either way, we're getting ahead of ourselves because they got to win
fire
this
Brad
game
stuff,
first.
Bobby, is based off of mainly one is emotional overreactions to just I don't know what I got to blame something. Brad's there. Fire him. There's only one reason to fire him, and that's if we find out after the season that the players don't want to play for him anymore.
That's it.
Anything short of that, then everyone trying to say, why does he do this? Why does he do that? Who the F else is he going to play? It was a shit season, and no matter who was coming up, it's like I always compare it to like a baseball bullpen. If you're down 3 runs and you're bringing in the back end of your bullpen, all of those guys suck. And everybody looks at the manager and is like, why are you bringing that? That's who I've got. I can't pitch the same guy every single day. I can't play my starters 45 minutes. These are the players I have. Every time no matter who you bring in, roll through all of the names. Tell me who makes you happy. Romeo, Semi, Grant, Javante, Taco. Like it doesn't.
I miss Javante. They could have used Javante.
Every one of those guys, when they would come in, you're like, ugh, not that guy. Like it's got to be somebody. There's just they all suck.
What's funny? It's funny? The 3 guys they need right now are Jeff Teague, Javante Green, and Daniel Tice.
I know. Think how good they'd be.
Yeah. We're totally not talking about the 7 seed.
Yeah. So, no, and again, there's a comment here. Just because team sucks doesn't mean I agree. It doesn't mean Brad is blameless. All I'm saying is the main reason right now everyone's pointing to Brad because of stuff like rotations and who he's playing. And the thing
there has been some question marks with the rotations and guys he's turned to. But ultimately, yes. I mean, he has to use with what he's got to work with. So at some point, your Brad blame has to go to Danny blame and so on and so forth. So
no, but we had some of it. No, I mean, we agreed. Like we wish he was more consistent. We wish he just said,
he was slow to some decisions too, like the Rob stuff and you know things like that. I mean, the Neesmith stuff. Like it was weird how players would go from the starting lineup to DNPs for like 4 games in a row. Like that was definitely weird. Like the extreme swings.
I hated that.
The extreme swings were something that I think you can definitely blame Brad on. But in terms of like who he's bringing in, I think most of the time he didn't really have a choice. Yeah, there was the random like Tremont Waters game where it's like, why is he in? But for the most part, it's like, this is what he has to work with. Now, he could maybe delegate the minutes a little bit differently or turn to guys sooner. But overall, I don't know another coach out there that could, make a miracle happen out of this roster.
It's not. It's just whether or not. And again, everyone's saying, a lot of things that make sense. Go ahead, Josue.
If Jaylen Brown, if he's still healthy, though, I think we're having a different conversation, right? I mean, like now it's like, oh well, you have to sort of get really creative now because this is it. I mean, you're losing 2 big players in your starting lineup in Robert Williams and also obviously the other All-Star next to Jayson Tatum. So I mean, that's what I think most Celtics fans are thinking about now. But we can't forget that 3 weeks ago we still weren't feeling great about Brad Stevens and his rotations. Like we still were sort of questioning his direction in some of these games,
A lot of it was just surviving the season, though. Like yes, they could have locked it down and just played the good guys extended minutes and try to win all these games. But you also had to try to find something. And you also had to try to make sure everybody didn't crumble the pieces as they ultimately did anyway. That was the biggest thing with Rob. I mean, we were screaming more Rob on here forever until finally they did, and he fell apart. So a lot of the stuff that people were yelling at him for actually came to fruition when push came to shove with those things. Brown got hurt, got off an increased burden. Tatum wore down because he was playing every game. Rob ultimately crumbled as well, just because they were relying on these guys too much.
Say it with me. Jaylen going down was a
blessing.
It's a blessing. Again, it's going to save a lot of people. I don't know if it's going to save jobs, but it's going to
sure.
It's going to put that scrutiny to rest.
My conspiracy theory is that maybe Jaylen could have probably played through it, but they were like, you know what, take one for the team. If you go down for the season, we're all off the hook. So what do you say, bud? Have that surgery.
That's how they handled Romeo's injury. If it's the same exact injury, he played with it, and then they were like, okay, we're not going to use you anymore, so we'll just have the surgery now. It was a decision, like, we're not going to play you anymore anyway, so surgery.
Yeah, and it's a timeline thing too, because next season's going to start pretty soon after this one ends. So you want to be able to have them ready for next season. And they say 3 to 5 months, which if it's the long end of that thing, it's going to go right in the training camp.
The team said 3. They didn't give a range. They said 3
months. They gave the short end of the projection there. So that would be great if that's what it ends up being. But even if it's at its worst, it'll go right in the training camp and he'll be ready for that opening day, which is a good decision there because you don't have the deep playoff run in this team.
This comment's hilarious. What's their record with Rob in the starting lineup? Go ahead, somebody.
I don't know, but I know
really
it's
good.
It's like 11-3. It's starting Rob, in fact, actually
close 10-2, something like that.
In fact,
Mar, take a lap, Mar.
In fact, the only thing proven to have worked that Brad did all year was starting Rob. It's the only thing that gave them results start to finish. Only lineup move he made that actually bore fruit right away. Right. Starting Rob.
Yeah.
But
and
yes,
if
thank you.
If he didn't get hurt, he would have stayed in the lineup.
Thank you for that comment. 11-3.
That's actually true.
That's the only thing. And when we talk about slow to react, yes, screaming from the mountaintop. So what are we doing here? Start him.
Then he got hurt multiple times.
Very slow. That was like historically slow to react. If you have to go back to the history books of reaction times.
Insanely, arrogantly, stubbornly slow. Like
25% of the season.
But it's crazy when we were losing our mind saying, what is he doing? And all of these excuses. Well, we're trying to blah, blah, blah.
It's not excuses. He got hurt twice after it happened.
Okay, that's what happened.
One doesn't mean the other, though.
The degenerative hip thing is what hurt his knee and sprained his toe.
Right. Yeah. Seriously.
Come on, guys.
He's just injury prone as a whole.
He might be. But
even
honestly,
if he is, being in the starting lineup or not doesn't make him more or less injury.
You're going to hurt yourself playing 18 minutes. You're going to hurt yourself playing 25. It's not a wear and tear.
No, but remember, when he started, he was still playing like 23 minutes, and you guys were like, ramp it up even more. Get to 30, 35. Let's keep going.
But the point is, he was playing like 14 for the first third of the
16.
year. Yeah,
and it was working great. He was very fresh.
It was not
working
great. They sucked.
Bobby, we did a double big lineup for like 25 games.
Well, I didn't like that.
It was horrible.
It was again.
Yes. Well, trading Tice was good in that sense. I'm actually not with they should have kept Tice after all people, because that was actually the right move, ushering Rob into the starting lineup with that move, the money ball thing that we talked about.
I think that's a ridiculous thing that people are saying and sticking to.
What?
Tice was not traded so Rob could play. Tice was traded so Wick could save $1. That's it. There is absolutely no way
that one's tricky.
A good player just so Brad would play Rob. That's the dumbest thing. But that's not what happened.
That one's tricky because it's not that Wick would have to pay $3 million in tax this year. The 26 or so that he would have to pay next year would have become like 50, and it really would have.
No, it's a huge bill, but I don't want to hear I'm not saying he was wrong. I'm saying that
they could have done it other ways.
Strictly a money move, not to play Rob. That's absolutely incorrect.
Well, you know what's not good is
because Tice was clearly, if not their second best big. Yeah, I mean, it's obvious. And when we were clamoring for Rob, all we were saying is, it wasn't Rob over everyone. It was just less Tristan. It was Tristan plays the small minutes against bruisers that you want him to come in and bang, and Rob and Tice get the majority of the minutes.
Yeah.
That's all we were saying.
See,
getting rid of Tice sucked because he was useful and he's a more reliable defender. You know.
That Thompson signing, that's going to be, when we look back on this year, I was so excited for it. Jimmy, a little less so, but still excited for it. And, you know, ultimately that put them in such a tough position right away. I think Ainge said on the radio last week, we didn't compete as well as we should have out of the gate. And that's where you start to actually get away from the injury excuses and other stuff that came up later in the year. Their start wasn't good enough. After that 8-3 stretch there. And that was because you introduced this thing in Thompson where even though he was hurt, even though he wasn't playing well, even though he had a tough time getting integrated, you still had to favor him and show concessions to him and put Tice out of position and really just put the roster in a spot that they are in a style that they weren't comfortable playing in. So that signing more than anything else put them in a really bad position to start this year. And again, that's where you start to look back on Ainge. Did he fix things as the year went on? He tried to. Who knows if he did? It ultimately didn't work this year. Maybe it works next year. But his offseason was bad outside of the draft. The two signings he made, Thompson, Teague, were just absolute disasters when they needed to really contribute right away.
Well, what's funny is a lot of Ainge's, like, you know, a lot of the takes burying Ainge had to do with back-to-back 14 picks being busts. But I think now, with Nesmith playing a little better and showing promise as someone who could theoretically be useful, then that changes a little. So two things Ainge did mid-season. This is what's funny about it. And, like, that's why I can't look at an off-season for Ainge and be like, fire him. You know, that's silly. That's silly too. Ultimately, is he capable? Is he smart? Does he make the right moves when they're available? You know, can he recognize talent? Is he bringing people in here? Like, look, multiple free agents came here, which was a big deal. And you know, he swung two franchise-altering trades, which most general managers will never have one trade as good as the one that got Kevin Garnett and Allen here to make that team. But the one that ended up with Philly, most people will never make that once in their life. He's done it twice, you know. And then three, you hit on Romeo and if you hit on Nesmith and Pritchard in the spots that you hit
that
in.
2019 one was really the tough
in a weak draft. That's fine. So you're burying him for 2019, but but now he makes a pretty good deal in Fournier, which helped the team this year. And those draft picks look a little better. All of a sudden, the Ainge at the beginning of the year, there was a whole lot of Ainge hate. I think it changes it changes the equation for him a little bit. He's not blameless. I think not consolidating assets when he should have earlier, maybe not recognizing. Jimmy will agree here. 1,000% trade deadline with Kyrie Irving. We were like, trade him, and everyone's like, you guys are crazy. We're like, no, he's not coming back. Trade him. You know, like Rozier, trade him. You know, if you're not going to bring him back. But he sat there paralyzed, deer in headlights, hoping for something to happen that clearly wasn't going to happen. He didn't read the tea leaves on the Kyrie situation correctly. That one hurt, not consolidating assets, waiting for that big Anthony Davis friggin' thing that never happened. All of that was bad. That was bad. Because you should have just, this isn't going to work.
Danny.
We got to go on to plan B fast. You know, don't let plan B happen to you. And he let a couple things happen to him, which hurt.
Facts.
Yeah. The Kemba trade, though, I mean, he lucked out there as well. I mean, if he wasn't unable to flip that, can you imagine? What, do you bring back Rozier? I mean, some Celtics fans would like that. You don't know.
It wouldn't have.
That
it wouldn't have been the worst
well
thing
at all.
in the world. No, it worked out well right away.
Yeah, but look, I mean, we're in the end of year 2. I think we can all agree that if you go back in time, you wouldn't do that. I don't think it's easy.
No,
I mean, you had a legitimate.
Do that,
but 10 times out of 10, you still do that trade.
Yeah, because you had a legit chance to win it all last year.
Back then,
you know, Hayward is coming.
No, I'm saying, knowing what you know now.
No, you wouldn't do it if you knew what you knew now.
Definitely I think you would. No. You had a real chance to win it all last year.
Doesn't matter. That's not what you're not playing. No GM play. Nobody. No general manager plays for 1 year. Ever. You're always playing with an eye on the future. You never do it. You don't sell out for 1 year because there's no certainties. This notion that, like, I've got a chance to win it this year, they don't work. They don't work that way.
They might, yeah, but once you lose Hayward,
you do it at a trade deadline when you're going to give a shit ton of assets for that one player you think you'll put you over the. But when you're team building, roster building at the beginning of a year and you're never thinking about this year to sign a guy to a 4-year deal. Nobody does that.
Yeah,
I think Rozier's a much better trade piece for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not even a question.
Yeah, there's
Also-
flexibility there, but again, I think you're a worse team probably.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. Rozier.
I don't know. I guess it doesn't matter now that you're the 7th seed. But
Rozier's doing his thing, man. If anything, Rozier's impressed me more than
It all depends. It all depends on what you want. Could he make you the 5 seed? Sure, but he wasn't. Him committing to him as part of your core isn't pushing you closer to a championship. Now, could he be a piece toward that? That's definitely the case.
All depends. You're talking about when Rozier got his deal coming off the year he had. Everybody was like, "Wow, who would pay him that?"
Right.
That's a steal right now. Okay, so again, when you look at it and say $20 million for what Rozier is doing. Abso-freaking-lutely, and he's a bigger guard. You're not worried about him defensively the same way you are with Kemba. Kemba in the playoffs, he's going to get eaten alive. He's had, and it just is what it is. Like, your limitations with Kemba. You've also got the age. You've also got the injury. Like, you would go back and undo that deal in a heartbeat if you could. You're not saying that Rozier is the building block, but Bobby, you're talking about giving Fournier literally everything he wants. You think Terry wasn't worth $20 million versus Kemba's 35? Of course he was. So. Yeah. That's a tough one.
And then maybe you could keep Hayward maybe too at that point. I don't know.
Also got to say regarding Ainge, we do have to mention we still don't know what happened in the offseason and whether he played a game of chicken and lost. That also could be a big blemish on his record.
That one makes people very mad.
Because that one made me really mad at the beginning of the season. So it is what it is. But that game of chicken, I think, cost them potentially.
We're kind of past that one though.
I know, but that one's tough without really having a full autopsy on the situation. I don't know how that went down. Let's tell people real quick, probably 10 minutes or so, we're going to head over to locker room. Jimmy, you want to be the one to join me this time early? And
sure.
Okay. Jimmy and I will head over. Bobby and Josue will follow up a few minutes later. Jumping onto locker room, we want to hear your thoughts on the Wizards matchup. Any end of season stuff. The stuff we're talking now, we're going to keep chopping up, obviously, long after the season is over. But, it's hard not to talk about now because here's where they are. They're 36-36. They finished the season at freaking 500. They're the 7th seed, okay? And they're playing for their playoff lives.
500 team. Bobby, your take on the 500 Celtics. Because in the beginning of the season,
anyway, join us on Locker Room. Download it. Join us. We'll talk about it.
Right, yeah, we'll talk about it. I guess I should ask you on Locker Room, but I think now's a good time. We should wrap up the show. Let's go back to our preseason expectations, and now here they are, 500 team. I know there's injuries, COVID, not really showing up as often as they maybe should have. But, I mean, this is, I would imagine you guys all agree, a disappointing record here, to say the least.
Yeah, it was a collective failure by everybody involved. It was Tatum and Brown getting better as playmakers, but not quite being what they needed them to be. It was Kemba getting back, but not always being available. And it was Brad not figuring stuff out, not making the younger players better, things we sort of maybe expected him to do. And it was Ainge, all the things we just talked about. So we always looked to point at one person. It was really everybody involved. Smart not having the best defensive season you could have imagined, but he got hurt. Mm-hmm. Brown, I thought, was disappointing defensively. And ultimately, when I look back on my preseason projections, I had them as a home court team because I thought they were going to be the best defense in the league. I thought Thompson was going to solidify that. I thought they had all the pieces to be elite on that end. And it was the complete opposite from day one. And in fact, I don't think we ever saw them get close to even being a competent defense this year. So all the excuses are valid, but there's deeper stuff there too. And
that's where I keep coming back to the players. When everyone's like, how are you going to blame Tatum and Brown? They had their best seasons. Again, this isn't friggin' Stratomatic. It's not stats only. That's not what we're looking at. The team had a bad defense, not because Tristan was disappointing or just because Tristan was disappointing. The two best players, Tatum, who is an outstanding team defender and a very engaged defender and he wants to be, and Jalen, who has the capability to be a lockdown on the ball defender, both decided that they weren't really going to give it their all this year. That's a fact, okay? And these are the leaders of your team, and they did not set an example. And that's why I keep coming back to them, which is it's all fine and good to score your points, but are you laying it on the line, showing everybody what you're willing to do to sacrifice on a nightly basis? And are you making your teammates better? I thought they failed at both of those things. So when I slice up my blame pie, I come back to those guys because they have it in them based off of their talent and ability to be better for the team, not better individual players. You'll look at the stats and be like, they were awesome, but I don't think they did what they needed to do for this team this year. And that's a look in the mirror sort of thing. You come back fresh with a longer offseason and time to kind of take stock of all of it. You could have two totally different guys who mature, who they could mature 3 years in one offseason after this year and be like, okay, now I kind of get it. I get some things. I have a different perspective. I don't think they had the right perspective this year.
No, that's a good point. That's really good, John. Yeah, exactly. I mean, these two have to establish a culture in this team, in that locker room. And I also think Marcus Smart injury that was huge too. I mean, looking back on it, to have someone there to constantly at least implement how important the defensive side of things is, especially in the Eastern Conference, and especially just overall the team that we thought was going to finish top 4, top 5, wherever you guys thought. I think we all agreed at least no lower than 5, right? I think we all agreed that they would be a top 10 defense, and they were far from that. And having Marcus Smart has a lot to do with that from an individual standpoint, but also he's sort of that muscle, that anchor on that end of the floor. When he's not out there, Tatum and Brown had to have been those guys. But I think, to John's point, they had their eyes on the prize on the offensive side. They were like, listen, we're eating over here. We're the top scoring duo in the NBA. I think that they thought that a lot of that was going to push them through throughout the season. Of course, that wasn't the case.
There's a sense that the whole program's broken, though, and that everything here is on unstable ground, which I don't agree with, because I think all the excuses are valid. You've said it, Jimmy. Like, it was John or Jimmy who said this. Like, Brad's a practice coach, and he had about 7 practices all year to start fixing this stuff. They game for like 5 and 7 days, and when you have guys hurt, when you have guys come back from COVID, that makes it even harder to find ground here. And again, this wasn't Grant getting hurt. This wasn't Semi getting hurt. This was Tatum, Brown, Rob, Kemba. Those guys were in and out all year. So the excuses are valid. I know no one wants to hear it after a year like this, but all this stuff, this whole weird season that they had here, it gets everybody an extra pass. And when you say it's a convenient excuse, the Brown thing, John, I don't agree with it in the sense that I don't think it would have gone the same way if everybody was fine all year. Like, I don't think they would have been the 7th seed if they didn't have all of these excuses. But at the same time, it does reflect other stuff going wrong that people aren't going to face consequences for, which they probably shouldn't.
I do want to point out a couple people in the chat are saying things like, well, they're the best players. Name other teams, best players who are also good defensive players. There's a freaking lot of them. Okay. Last year's first defensive team was Giannis, Anthony Davis, Ben Simmons, Rudy Gobert. Yes, they are among the team's best players. Second team, Kawhi Leonard, Bam Adebayo. So give me a break.
And you know what?
Give me a break just because you're stars, you can't play defense. Of course you can friggin' play defense. That's why they call it two-way players. It doesn't mean now that I've arrived on the offensive end, I'm going to slack by 30, 40% there. You're about that or you're not. And so
you have to do both to win it all. You
have to do both. You can't just be like, these guys play the defense now. I just scored. You do that and you're cooked. Team's never gonna get ahead that way.
And on top of that, they aren't good.
There's another one. There's a lot of them out there.
They aren't good enough to take defense off yet. Don't get me wrong. Like, they're all stars. I get it, or at least I can see Tatum ascending to that level. But they're not at that point yet. Jaylen Brown's not good enough to just not play defense. He doesn't give you enough on every other facet of the game where you can just say, oh, I'm a superstar, I'm going to take games off. And the names that you just listed, John, those are all superstar players because they do play it both ways. And they do, have that ability on both ends of the court. So it might not seem sometimes, maybe it doesn't seem like they're putting in as much effort because they might make it look more effortless, but they are extremely good two-way players. The Celtics as a team aren't good enough to just rely on offense. They just aren't. They need to play both sides. They need to play defense. And Brad Stevens is that type of a coach. He's been able to get average players to play above their pay grade or above their, what people expect out of them because of the effort and because of what they do on both sides. As soon as that stops, there's not enough talent on this roster to just get by playing offense. And that's why when you just look at a player, when you look at Tatum, you look at Brown, you look at, these stats, it's like, wow, these guys had much better numbers this year. Everybody improved. It's like, well, no, actually they didn't because they didn't play well as a team. They weren't connected on defense. They didn't really step up when they needed to. So it's very
Smart had a down year too.
Exactly. It's difficult to just look at the stats and say, oh, they all had better years. How come they're a 500 team? Well, it's because they didn't have, they didn't play better together when they were out there on the court. That's really, what it comes down to. And they missed time, but when you're looking at their games played this year, I mean, I look at Jayson Tatum, 64 games. Jaylen Brown, 58 games. These guys didn't miss the majority of the season. So while you can use injuries and COVID as an excuse, don't act like, the Celtics were without their star players all year, because they were in the game way more often than they weren't in the game.
Yeah. And they played mediocre. And again, yes, they missed a lot of people a lot of times, but most games were missing one guy, which a lot of teams do. And it's, again, the amount of double – we talked about this, and we were talking about it on the text thread. I mean, they were down in 40 of the 72 games or somewhere close to that. They trailed by double digits, and they trailed by 20 more than 20 times. That's crazy. That's a freaking disgrace, okay?
Yeah.
I don't – unless you're telling me Jaylen Brown is a plus 20 over replacement, or Kemba Walker is a plus 20 over replacement, that should never be the case with this team. Regardless of their lack of depth, that's just sad. And they did it all season long.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah.
Those are the
that's
things.
A wild stat. 20 points over 20 times is just pathetic.
Really. It's crazy.
Those are the deeper things we see from just watching these games every single night. The play style not being a fit to what Stevens wants, almost in defiance of what you would expect Stevens wanting on many nights. The lack of passing, the lack of pace, ball movement, rotation, all that stuff. That was where it became infuriating to watch them at times. Yeah. And I think a lot of that had to do with handling adversity,
Yeah. Another thing interesting is, you'd think based off of them being, thin this year, that the minutes would have gone skyrocketing. Tatum only played like 1 minute more per game, than he did last year when they had healthier. Jaylen Brown was less than a full minute more per game over last year, so it wasn't overuse either. You'd think that they buried these guys.
Tatum played almost every game when he needed some nights off in there.
He did. But again, overall, they were still in the 35-minute mark. It's what they were last year, too. All of their top players played roughly the same minutes per game that they did over last year.
The games were more condensed. You had 5 games in 7 nights and ton of back-to-back.
It was a tough schedule. Yeah. It was a tough schedule. But you would have just thought, given the fact that they did lack depth, that they'd be overused and among the highest minutes guys, and they were about where they were last year.
That's another second guess, and we all said this. They should have rested more ultimately, because they didn't win the games anyway.
Yeah,
and luckily they did this week, and that's why I think they're going to win on Tuesday. I think they're going to be fresh. I think they're going to be close to healthy at the top of the roster. We'll see with Rob and Smart, and I think that they're just a better team than the Wizards. They're a better team than the Hornets. They're a better team than the Pacers. But they
don't play as a team.
Yeah.
They have a better roster, Bobby, but that doesn't necessarily make them a better team. We're going to find out.
Yeah, but this isn't the Heat. This isn't
something the plot of a Disney
Bucks.
No, it doesn't work like that, I just don't think it's going to happen.
I got them on Tuesday, and I do see people getting excited for Wizards Nets, so some people feel differently about that.
It should be interesting. All right,
why is it a 9 o'clock start? Don't even get me started.
The other play-in's probably earlier in the night, right?
I don't.
Celtics Wizards. You get 2 East Coast teams. Why are you playing at 9 o'clock?
I think there's only one game that night.
It's because the
TNT primetime. That's it.
I don't know.
9 o'clock. If there's only one game, it makes sense. It's 9 for both audiences. If you're not going to have a late one, so
I guess
there might be 2 games because the
squeezing out every dollar they can.
The play-in's 4 days, and
that's what this play-in's all about.
I love the games. Tournament, by the way. I don't care what anyone says. I love this idea.
Remember how good it was last year? The Portland-Memphis game was epic.
Yeah,
I love it.
And now you get it.
It seems pretty redundant, John, to be honest. I mean, you had the Wizards and Hornets play each other for a spot in the playoffs that really wasn't a spot in the playoffs. So, I mean, we're just going to do it all over again.
Do it again.
By the way, Lakers, the Nuggets lose tonight. They'll probably tank. They're going to be in the play-in tournament, too.
That's be fun.
Now that's a team that I would bet to win the play-in tournament. The Lakers.
Yes, right.
That's the difference.
The two bets.
They are plus 2,000 to miss the playoffs.
I'll put $2,000 on the Lakers to win, and then take the difference and put it on the Celtics to lose both.
See, that says it all. Bobby's stat to start the show is Celtics plus 400, and he used that as Vegas thinks the Celtics are going to win. The Lakers are plus 2,000. That's a team that Vegas thinks is going to win, Bobby, not necessarily the Celtics.
Not the 400.
Yeah.
Again, great odds. Maybe it's a good bet.
All right, we heading over, John?
We are. Amit's going to put out a link soon. I think it's out there now. Throw it in the
I will
chat.
say,
Yeah.
to LeBron's credit, if the Lakers lose the play-in tournament, the person who came up with it will be getting fired.
True. He's shaking right now. Absolutely.
Who is this guy? You know he wants to speak up.
Rob,
That
I
would
don't
be pretty
understand.
bad for the league. Honestly, that's a good point. He probably should be fired if the play-in tournament takes LeBron's Lakers out of the playoffs. That's you can't spin
It's
that
tough
as a
though,
positive.
because if you didn't have this play-in tournament, the last 3 weeks would have been teams resting players, sitting back, relaxing, and just cruising to the playoffs, and that's excruciating every year, isn't it?
Legitimately baffled at this comment. These are also very good offensive players. These are very good players who are playing both ways. But anyway, let's
very. What's his point?
I don't know that I've said Giannis was the best player and playing good at defense.
You know what, John? Apologize for Neesmith.
The best
Come
players
on.
usually not.
Yeah, right. Apologize for the guy you're begging to play. Yeah. All right. So we're gonna go over Jimmy and I and do this locker room thing. Jimmy, you got to keep me honest. I don't have my normal headphones, so you tell me how I sound when I get on there, because I'm a little dubious here.
You sound okay on this. I mean, aside from your voice, you sound
on
fine.
this fine, but on the phone. Everybody else, download it if you haven't. John needs an apology cam. No, oh crap. I was going to, but it's the last game of the season. I gotta go, guys. I'm sorry. I was
We're
totally
up against it.
For what? For Romeo?
There he goes.
Who knows?
Let's we can come up with a little list right now.
Gonna bring that up.
I'll see you fellas in a bit.
All right, Jimmy.
Yeah, we'll see you over there. I mean, things John needs to apologize for.
Is it the Romeo thing?
I mean, yeah, if you're gonna hang your hat on, like, going on Romeo.
No. Give me a break on that. I said audition the guy.
You can't just put takes out there, and if it doesn't work, be like, oh, whatever, it didn't work.
Thing. It was like, can you just play them? See what
I'm
happens.
like, you just play him and see. Yeah. I said I want to see. I would rather play Romeo and see if he's good than play Semi. I'm not apologizing for that. But I still want that.
Well, you could have just stuck with Neesmith.
Change everything, like, oh, this could change the second
unit. Yeah, I didn't say Romeo's going to be the reason they win it all. I said play this guy instead of Semi, for God's sake. We're so tired of seeing Semi play.
All right, well,
fine, bye.
If Kemba wins the play-in game, we'll revisit that one.
Okay, we'll do that one.
Kemba's going to go off. I think that's the thing. But you put him on ice right now. You get him out there. I'm almost going to guarantee Fournier is going to drop 20. So you're in a good spot. But again, this is one-on-one. This is one night only. Going up against Westbrook, going up against Beal. I mean, yeah, the Beal injury going into this, sure, but off of pure adrenaline, if those two start cooking, man, it could be tough. Especially
it's scary. It's a scary matchup.
That front court can really. I mean, if the Celtics offense gets ice cold, that team can really pick up momentum on the defensive side, and then that's when the Celtics are really in trouble.
Westbrook goes into these games late this year and plays like he'd rather die than lose. It's unreal the amount of energy.
Warm out. Like he just turns into this guy that he is right now. It's like,
so that's what scares me. There's some positives too, though, and I think the positives outweigh that. Beal's hobbled. Kemba and Tatum just got a handful of days off. They're going to practice tomorrow. Kemba's been off for 5 days at this point or whatever it is. And we've seen this year that when Kemba gets those days off, he comes back with massive amounts of energy, movement, scoring, all that stuff. Tatum, when he finally got a day off against the Thunder a couple weeks ago, on Friday night, he comes back and scores 60. So I think that game off for all of them. Smart getting a couple off here. He might actually be hurt. We'll see. I think it's just a bruise, but I think they're going to be so fresh. I think they're going to be so well prepared with that practice. And I think the enthusiasm, the energy, and the urgency that they need to win these games is finally going to arrive because, like you said, it's a one-game environment. They're into the playoffs now, and they know, based on the path ahead, how urgent they're going to have to be to even compete with the teams that they're going to be running into. So if you guys are right and they just completely throw this one in the trash can and just mope their way through it again, I'm going to be shocked.
That's John, though. That's John thinking that. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I don't think that. I think that's what eventually happens in a best-of-7 series once you're down 2-0 and you're down by 20 in Game 3. That's going to happen to any NBA team, especially throughout after the season that they just had. I'm concerned that they're going to give it all they have against Washington, and then they lose, and I really don't like their chances in the second game because it's just like, man, like, is it even worth it at this point, guys? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, man. I don't know. I just think the Celtics team it's fragile. They have a very fragile mindset, and depending on how the game breaks down or how things play out in that game against Washington, if they lose, I really don't like their mentality heading into still being in that play-in tournament.
There's questions for Washington too in this game. The one I always ask with them is who guards Tatum. It's been Beal in the past, and he's done a good job, but again, he's hurt. They don't have a lot of wing players off their bench. They're not a good defensive team as a whole. I mean, they go out there and they have to outscore you. I like the way Lopez is playing in recent weeks, and again, Ish Smith is a Celtics killer. Westbrook's scary.
Yeah, look out for them.
But I'm not scared by anything they throw at you defensively.
What about Rui Hachimura?
Yeah, he's playing great offensively.
He's been streaky, but lately offensively, yeah, he's been sort of he's kind of picked up his stride here.
Yeah, it's all about
defending Tatum too. He's gonna definitely get some looks.
It depends how fresh and healthy the Celtics are ultimately. If Rob plays, or even if he's out and he's a shell of himself, that's going to be tough to deal with here. If Thompson plays like he did last week, that's even going to be harder. And then you don't have options behind them really at center. If Smart's a shell of himself, as he was looking the last week or so with that calf injury there, that's going to be a hard thing for them to deal with. So what's hard to decipher right now, Joe Sway, is are they really hurt, or did they just pack it in the last week and rest up?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Maybe it's a little bit of both. I mean, for certain players, for Kemba, I don't think that's the case. Kemba looks great. I think that bodes well for the Celtics' chances, and hit that momentum. Even though he's been on ice for the last few days, I just think his confidence right now is perfect. It's where they need it to be. It's just, man, if Jalen's healthy, I would have liked the Celtics' chances better in this matchup for sure.
I do like. Well, they wouldn't even been here, I don't think, if Jalen was healthy.
They're not even in this tournament.
Yeah. So I like the defensive matchups in this one. I like that Smart's probably going to be able to guard Westbrook. You can put Tatum on Beal and try to wrap him up. And then you just have those other guys, like, who cares who guards Lopez and Rui and those types. Wherever you put them, you're going to be able to deal with that, I think. And then you want a guy like Fournier to probably stay with Ish Smith or Kemba, rather, in that position. Fournier can guard one of their other wings here. They're ultimately, I think, a good matchup along the perimeter for the Celtics to grapple with here. You have a guy like Bertans who just shoots threes.
He can get hot too, man. See, I don't like.
So that's the thing with how good with how good they are offensively. I do think John's 2.5 point spread is actually fair. I think it's going to be a close game.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. Cornette, I think he might have to step up here. I think, honestly, just for guys off the bench. I mean, I don't like. I'm looking at what we saw today, and I'm like, which one of these guys is it going to be? Well,
here's the thing: if you play Tatum 40 minutes, if you play Kemba 40 minutes, Fournier, that wraps up those 3 spots for the most part. You can shift Pritchard in for 10 to 12 minutes, maybe. You can mix in another wing, and then you do what you need to do at center, I guess. So Cornette could factor in there if Rob doesn't play. I wouldn't want to see him if Rob does play.
Playing though, that's true.
Rob's really the key, isn't he?
Yeah.
I don't know. How long does turf toe take to be able to be comfortable or somewhat comfortable and move and play a full game again?
Yeah.
Because if he's right, that's a ginormous boost. You feel much better about this team.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, he got he already received the cortisone shot. Brad Stevens said that a few days ago. So, I mean, we'll see. We'll see if that can subside the pain enough for him to perform.
9 o'clock, so that's a long wait, and even more rest time for the Celtics, and they can probably even go a little bit harder and longer in practice tomorrow. Off that, I was so thrilled to hear that they were going to be practicing tomorrow because I think that helps them so much. I don't know what they're going to be able to cram in there and hammer in on, but it's like that one last walkthrough that they really need, I think, and Brad's already been preparing for Charlotte and Washington and all these different teams that were possible coming into this week because they clinched 7 midway through last week. I just think they're going to be so prepared for this. Washington's been playing like it's playoffs for the last 3-4 weeks, so I think their energy probably isn't as high. But like you said, when it comes to one game, the hot team can come in and ride a wave of shooting or whatever else it's going to be that's going to deliver a victory there. But you know what's true? If the Celtics lose this play-in tournament or even this game, I think it's very disappointing because they are the better team than these teams.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's still disappointing, but I almost feel like the Jaylen Brown injury sort of excuses not the entire season, but why they're here and unfortunately the end result, whatever that means. People are going to look back and say, "Oh, well, they didn't have Jaylen."
You know what's going to happen? They're going to win this play-in tournament. Someone great's going to be drafted where they would have fallen to, and everyone will want to show loss in a couple of years.
That could happen too. We have
Warriors are up on the Grizzlies out west.
And for people wondering if I'm going like this too many times, sorry, this game's been crazy.
Yeah, Warriors play the Lakers, or whoever wins this game plays the Lakers in that play-in tournament. I keep saying Lakers. There's still a chance Portland could fall, but since the Nuggets are the 3 seed and they would play the Lakers if they win and let the Lakers in, they are better off losing to the Blazers today, dropping the 4 and playing the Mavs and letting the Blazers get that 6 seed against. It would be the Clippers. So it would be Clippers, Blazers, Nuggets versus the Mavericks, and then the Lakers playing in against Grizzlies and Warriors. And that would obviously go on the Phoenix with a 7 seed versus 2. So some good matchups lining up. Think of Lakers, Suns. You think of the Nuggets and Mavs lining up, and the Clippers and Blazers out west. Those West playoffs are going to be outstanding.
Imagine knocking out the Lakers in the first round. Oh man, that would be great. That would pave the way for them, right? I mean,
you could end up with Clippers Lakers. Doubtful, but it's a possibility as well. So just a lot of intriguing matchups out there. In the East, we're talking Knicks locking in at 4. I believe the Hawks are probably going to be the 5, but the Heat could bounce up there if things go their way tonight. So you could see Heat Knicks. You could see Heat Bucks, as John talked about. And that is scary for Milwaukee.
Yeah, you don't want to play the Heat right now. I don't think any of those teams really want to, but especially Milwaukee.
Going to be a great postseason, I think. And we'll see how long we're still able to do this as far as the Celtics can go.
I know. We'll see what the schedule looks like with the Celtics and, after their demise.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so we are headed over to Locker Room. Like we always say, get it on Apple, get it on Android as well.
That's right.
At this point.
You got a cell phone. Download the app. Join us. We're about to head over right now.
And make sure you get those streams if you can't get us live here, or at 9 o'clock on Tuesday if you're not going to be able to stay up for that one. But we stream this post-game show on our Garden Report feed, and we stream the Locker Room show on our Celtics post-game feed. So make sure you subscribe to both of those podcast feeds wherever you get them. We are back Tuesday for the play-in tournament, Celtics versus Wizards. We'll be going live here about 11:30 at night, and then taking you up to 3 a.m. with all the stuff we do.
At the locker room.
So Joe Sway, make sure you go get one of those big things of coffee that you can pour in those reusable K-cups and just have it lined up for that night.
You're gonna hear background cooking, like that sound the K-cup makes. I got a K-cup there, so yeah, that's my go-to for sure. And 2 cups that night, absolutely.
I hope everybody enjoyed their weekends and rested up for that one. I'm Bobby Manning. He is Joe Sway Pavone. We will see you Tuesday night.
See you guys.